For years, my parents begged me to find a real career like my brother, Maverick. They called my consulting work a hobby. They didn't know I'd just been appointed the interim CEO of his new company, so I called a mandatory meeting and introduced myself. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The migraine was splitting my head open like a ripe melon dropped on concrete. It wasn't just a headache. It was the accumulation of 6 months of sleepless nights, cross-continental flights, and the kind of high-stakes negotiation that makes grown men weep in boardrooms. I was currently running a fever of 101, and my body felt like it was made of lead and broken glass. But I was there. I was sitting at the mahogany dining table in my parents' house, the smell of roasted chicken and heavy perfume suffocating me because Caroline, my mother, had insisted. She said it was a mandatory family celebration. And when Caroline used the word mandatory, you either showed up or you were written out of the will for the next 3 months. "Evelyn, you look dreadful," Caroline said, not with concern but with a distinct tone of annoyance. She placed a heavy serving platter of potatoes in the center of the table, the porcelain clinking sharply against the glass protector. "Have you been staring at that computer screen all day again? I've told you, it ruins your complexion. You look gray." I took a sip of water, trying to swallow down the nausea. "I've been working, Mom. It's been a busy quarter." "Working?" Christian, my father, scoffed from the head of the table. He was carving the chicken with the precision of a surgeon and the warmth of a glacier. "Clicking buttons in your pajamas isn't working, Evie. It's freelancing. It's gig work. It's what people do when they can't handle the structure of the real world." I closed my eyes for a second, the familiar sting of their dismissal washing over me. "I run a consultancy, Dad. I specialize in corporate restructuring. It's not gig work." "Its instability is what it is," Christian corrected, pointing the carving knife at me for emphasis. "No benefits, no 401k matching, no ladder to climb. You're floating, Evelyn, and at 34, floating looks a lot like drowning." "Speaking of ladders," Caroline interrupted, her face lighting up as the front door swung open. The sudden shift in her demeanor was almost blinding. She went from critical matriarch to adoring fan in a nanosecond. "The man of the hour is here." Maverick walked in. My older brother, the golden boy, the sun around which my parents' entire universe orbited. He was 36, handsome in a generic, catalog model sort of way, and wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He tossed his keys on the sideboard with a heavy clatter, announcing his presence with the volume of someone who expects to be applauded just for existing. "Sorry I'm late," Maverick said, grinning as he loosened his tie. Traffic coming out of the city was a nightmare, but when you're driving the new company lease, you don't mind sitting in it. "The Audi?" Christian asked, his eyes gleaming. "The Audi," Maverick confirmed, sliding into the seat opposite me. He barely looked at me. "Hey, Evie, still sick?" "Hi, Maverick," I rasped. "We were just waiting for you to make the announcement properly," Caroline gushed, pouring him a glass of wine before he even asked. "Tell us everything." Maverick leaned back, expanding his chest, soaking in the admiration. "Well, it's official. As of Monday, I am the new regional sales director for Vanguard Logistics. Base salary is up 40%, full benefits package, stock options, and of course the car." "Vanguard?" Christian slammed his hand on the table triumphantly. "Now that is a company, that is a legacy firm. Global reach, solid stock. That is a real job, son. I am so proud of you." "They really rolled out the red carpet," Maverick continued, taking a long drink of wine. "The VP of sales told me they need new blood to shake things up, said the old guard is too slow. They want a shark, and apparently I'm the shark." "You certainly are," Caroline beamed, reaching across to pat his hand. Then her eyes flicked to me, the warmth instantly evaporating. "You see, Evelyn, this is what we mean. Maverick has security. He has a title. He has a future. You can't play on your laptop forever. Eventually, you have to grow up and get a real job like your brother." The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the table. "I'm happy for you, Maverick," I said, my voice tight. "But Vanguard, are you sure that's a safe bet right now? I read some reports." "Oh, stop it," Maverick snapped, his smile dropping into a sneer. "Don't try to rain on my parade just because you're jealous, Evie. You read a blow." G-post, a tweet. Vanguard is a titan, but I wouldn't expect someone who works in their living room to understand corporate stability. "I'm just saying," I pressed, despite the pounding in my head. "Their Q3 earnings were delayed twice. That's usually a red flag." "Enough," Christian barked. "We will not have this jealousy at the dinner table. Your brother just landed a massive executive role. You should be taking notes, not criticizing. Maybe if you humbled yourself, Maverick could put in a word for you. Get you something in entry-level admin. Get you some health insurance." I looked at them. I looked at Maverick's smug grin, my father's disdain, my mother's disappointment. They saw a failure. They saw a woman in pajamas. They didn't know that the reports I read were the confidential financial audits sitting on my encrypted server at home. The betrayal wasn't that they preferred him. It was that they assumed I was worthless simply because they didn't understand what I did. "I don't need a job at Vanguard, Dad," I said quietly. "Clearly," Maverick laughed, biting into a roll. "They don't hire hobbyists." The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself, worse than the fever burning through my veins. It was the absolute certainty that they enjoyed seeing me small. The dinner dragged on for 2 hours. 2 hours of Maverick recounting the interview process, the handshake with the vice president, the specifications of the office he would be occupying on the 40th floor. He talked about the executive dining room and the corporate retreat in Aspen as if he had personally built the company from the ground up. I sat there, pushing peas around my plate, my silence interpreted as sulking. "You really should look into a data entry role, Evelyn," Caroline said as we moved to the living room for coffee. She was holding a cup of decaf, staring at me with that pitying look that hurts more than anger. "I'm sure Maverick could ask HR, just something to get you out of the house. You're 34. It's not healthy to be so isolated." "I'm not isolated, Mom. I have a team. They're just remote." "Imaginary friends," Maverick joked from the armchair. He was scrolling through his phone, probably updating his LinkedIn status to incoming director. "She has imaginary friends, Mom. Leave her be." "I have clients," I said, my patience fraying like a rope over a sharp edge. "International clients." "Sure, Evie," Maverick said, not looking up. "Is the client in the room with us right now?" Christian chuckled. "Don't be cruel, son. She tries in her own way." I checked my watch. 8:30 p.m. In exactly 30 minutes, the embargo on the press release would lift. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an encrypted message from the firm, the elite crisis management group that contracted me for the impossible jobs. Subject: Operation Vanguard. Status: Board approval confirmed. Signatures ratified. Role: Interim CEO/Chief Restructuring Officer. Start date: effective immediately. Mandate: total liquidation of incompetent leadership. Stabilize assets. Prepare for acquisition. I stared at the screen. The irony was so thick I could taste it like metal. Vanguard Logistics wasn't just in trouble, as I had hinted to Maverick. It was rotting from the inside out. The board of directors had panicked after the CEO fled the country amid an embezzlement scandal that hadn't hit the news yet. They needed a cleaner. They needed an executioner. They hired me. "Everything okay in fantasy land?" Maverick asked, catching me staring at my phone. "Get a new level on Candy Crush." I looked up at him. For the first time all night, the headache receded, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. He was so proud. He was so incredibly arrogant about boarding a sinking ship, convinced he was the captain, not realizing he was just cargo. "Actually," I said, tucking the phone away, "I just got some interesting news." "Oh?" Caroline asked, half listening as she adjusted a pillow. My hobby just landed a new contract, I said, keeping my voice even. A big one. That's nice, dear, Christian said dismissively. Maybe you can pay for your own gas this month. Yeah, congrats on the $50, Maverick smirked. But seriously, Evie, I'm going to need you to move your car. I parked the Audi behind you, and I don't want you dinging it when you back out that rust bucket of yours. I stood up, my legs feeling surprisingly steady. I'll move it right now. I should get going anyway. I have a very early start on Monday. Monday, Maverick laughed. What happens Monday? Do the servers reset? Something like that, I said, pulling on my coat. As I walked to the door, Maverick called out one last piece of advice. Hey, seriously. If you want to apply at Vanguard, do it before I start on Monday. Once I'm in the director's chair, I can't be showing favoritism to unqualified family members. It looks bad for my brand. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. I looked back at them, a tableau of suburban judgment. Christian nodding in agreement, Caroline looking at Maverick with adoration, and Maverick basking in his own reflected glory. Don't worry, Maverick, I said softly. I won't ask you for any favors, I promise. I walked out into the cool night air. The fever was still there, but the fire in my belly burned hotter. They thought Maverick was the future of Vanguard. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. Maverick had just signed a contract with a company I now owned. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand the history. I wasn't always the black sheep. In fact, for most of our lives, I was Maverick's keeper. When we were in high school, Maverick was the star quarterback, but he was failing algebra and history. Who stayed up until 3:00 a.m. rewriting his essays so he wouldn't get kicked off the team? I did. When he crashed Christian's car during his freshman year of college and needed money to fix it before Dad found out, who emptied her savings account from 3 summers of lifeguarding? I did. I loved my brother. I wanted him to succeed. I bought into the myth that he was special and I was the support staff. But as we got older, the dynamic shifted. I went into corporate law, then pivoted to crisis management. I found I had a knack for seeing patterns in chaos. I worked hard, 80-hour weeks, no holidays, building a reputation in a shadow industry where you don't get public accolades, you just get giant wire transfers and ironclad NDAs. Maverick, on the other hand, coasted. He bounced from sales job to sales job, always leaving before he got fired, always blaming bad management or market conditions. He was charming, he was tall, and he knew how to shake a hand. In the corporate world, that can get you surprisingly far. But Caroline and Christian never saw the cracks. To them, Maverick's flashiness was success. My silence was failure. The Sunday before my first day at Vanguard, my parents came over to my apartment. I lived in a pre-war building downtown. It was expensive real estate, but understated. No doorman, just a heavy security system and a nondescript entrance. It smells like old paper in here, Caroline said, wrinkling her nose as she walked into my living room. She ignored the Herman Miller chair and the original art on the walls. She just saw small apartment. It's vintage, Mom, I said, pouring them tea. Why the visit? We wanted to make sure you were okay after Friday, Christian said, standing by the window and looking down at the street with disapproval. Maverick felt bad. He thinks he might have been too hard on you. Did he? I asked. That didn't sound like Maverick. Well, he's under a lot of pressure, Caroline defended quickly. This job is a big step. He's looking at houses, you know, in the hills, a proper 4-bedroom. He says he wants to be ready for when he settles down. She looked around my 1-bedroom apartment pointedly. Unlike some of us who are still living like college students. I like my space, I said. It's not about what you like, Evelyn, Christian said, turning around. It's about optics. Maverick understands that. He projects success. You project struggle. And frankly, it's embarrassing for us. When our friends ask what our children are doing, we say Maverick is a director at a global logistics firm. And when they ask about you, we have to say consultant. It sounds like a euphemism for unemployed. It's not a euphemism, I said, my voice hardening. It's a profession. It's a phase, Christian corrected, and it's time it ended. Maverick said he's going to look at your resume tomorrow morning. He's going to see if he can get you in as a receptionist. It pays $18 an hour. That's steady money, Evelyn. I set my teacup down. The ceramic clinked loudly in the quiet room. Receptionist, I repeated. Don't turn your nose up at it, Caroline snapped. It would be a kindness. He's risking his reputation for you. The least you can do is be grateful. He's going to be a very important man there. You could learn a lot from him. I looked at them, really looked at them. They weren't bad people, intrinsically. But they were blinded by a narrative they had written decades ago. Maverick the prince, Evelyn the servant. Nothing I did would ever change that story for them. I could buy the moon, and they'd ask why Maverick didn't get the first flag on it. I won't be applying for the receptionist job, I said clearly. Stubborn, Christian muttered, shaking his head. Just like always, you'd rather starve than admit you need help. I'm not starving, Dad. You will be, he warned. Maverick is going to soar, and you're going to be left behind. Don't come crying to us when he's running that place and you're still sitting in this apartment. They left 10 minutes later. They had to go meet Maverick for a celebratory brunch. I wasn't. Tea invited. I locked the door behind them and walked to my home office. I sat down at my desk and unlocked my secure terminal. The Vanguard organizational chart filled the left screen. There in the new hires pending onboarding queue was Maverick's profile. Name, Maverick Vance. Role, Regional Sales Director. Salary, $185,000 plus commission. Reports to VP of Sales, Simon Legree. I opened the file on Simon Legree. He was one of the executives flagged for gross negligence. He was on my termination list for day one. I looked at Maverick's face on the screen, his LinkedIn photo, smiling, confident, oblivious. He thought he was walking into a coronation. I opened the Executive Leadership node at the top of the chart. The box for CEO was currently blank. I typed in Evelyn Vance. Title, Interim Chief Executive Officer. I hit enter. The chart updated. My name sat at the very top, connected by a solid black line to everyone else, including Maverick. You're right, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. He is going to learn a lot from me. Monday morning arrived with the gray, steel-tinted light of a storm front moving in. It fitted my mood perfectly. I didn't wake up in my pajamas. I woke up at 5:00 a.m. and went through my ritual. A 5-mile run to clear the cortisol from my system, a shower cold enough to shock the nerves, and then the armor. For years, my family had only seen me in oversized sweaters and jeans, the uniform of the remote worker. Today, I put on the armor that the firm knew me by, a bespoke charcoal suit tailored in Milan, 3-inch stilettos that clicked on marble like gunshots, and a platinum watch that cost more than Maverick's beloved Audi. I pulled my hair back into a severe, sleek bun. I wasn't Evelyn the sister today. I was Evelyn Vance, the cleaner. I drove my rust bucket, a reliable, if aging, Volvo, to a private garage 2 blocks from the Vanguard Logistics Tower. I didn't want my car seen in the executive lot yet. I needed the element of surprise. Entering the Vanguard building was a study in sensory details. The lobby was a cavern of glass and polished stone, smelling of floor wax and expensive coffee. I walked past the security desk. The guard, a heavy-set man named Miller who had been briefed by the board chairman over the weekend, stiffened as I approached. Ms. Vance, he nodded, his voice lowered. Your badge is ready. Access level Alpha. Thank you, Miller. Has Mr. Legree arrived? He's in the penthouse suite, ma'am. He arrived 20 minutes ago. And your brother just pulled in. He's parking in the reserved visitor spots. Let him park, I said, taking the heavy black access card. It makes him feel important. I took the private elevator to the 45th floor. The doors opened directly into the executive wing. It was quiet up here, insulated from the chaos of the logistics floor below. I walked straight to the CEO's office, a massive corner suite that had been vacant for 3 weeks. I didn't turn on the lights immediately. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the city. This was the view Maverick bragged about, the view he thought he had earned. I sat down at the massive oak desk and booted up the terminal. My override codes granted me immediate access to the entire network. I didn't start with the financials. I already knew they were a disaster. I started with personnel. I pulled up Maverick's hiring file. I needed to know how he got this job. Maverick was a decent salesman, sure, but a regional director for a company this size? He was woefully underqualified. I found the email thread between Simon Legree, VP of Sales, and the former CEO. From S. Legree to CEO Legacy Subject, New Director Candidate. Found a perfect candidate for the Western region. Name is Maverick Vance. He's hungry, obsessed with the title, and significantly, he's not a details guy. He won't look twice at the shipping manifests if we tell him it's executive privilege. We can route the phantom shipments through his authorization codes. He'll sign anything if we give him a company car. Let's fast-track him. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. It wasn't just nepotism or incompetence. It was a setup. Maverick wasn't the shark. He was the bait. Legree was using my brother as a liability shield. They were going to funnel illegal cargo or fraudulent invoices through Maverick's signature. And when the SEC or the auditors came knocking, Legree would claim ignorance and point the finger at the rogue regional director. Maverick would go to prison. Legree would retire to the Cayman Islands. I leaned back in the leather chair, the silence of the office pressing in on me. My parents were right about one thing: Maverick was going to be famous, but not in the way they thought. I had a choice. I could fire him immediately, save him from himself, and listen to my family scream at me for ruining his big break for the rest of my life. Or I could let him wow. K into the trap and then dismantle it around him. I tapped the intercom button. This is Evelyn Vance. Send the general counsel to my office, immediately. By Tuesday afternoon, the rumor mill at Vanguard was spinning so fast it was generating its own gravity. The employees knew something was happening. They knew the board had appointed an interim fixer, but nobody knew who it was. I had remained in the CEO suite, issuing digital directives and freezing assets, invisible to the general population. I needed coffee, real coffee, not the sludge from the breakroom machine. I took the elevator down to the lobby cafe. It was a calculated risk, but I needed to gauge the atmosphere on the ground. I was standing at the counter, waiting for a double espresso, when I heard a familiar, booming laugh. "I'm telling you, the bonus structure is insane," Maverick was saying. He was standing near the entrance with two younger men, junior sales associates who looked at him with a mixture of awe and fear. Maverick was wearing a suit that was a shade too blue, his gestures expansive. "I'm already looking at boats. You guys like sailing." I tried to turn away, but he spotted me. The silence that followed was absolute. Maverick blinked, his brain trying to process my presence in his kingdom. He looked at my suit, the sharp tailoring, the stilettos, and his brow furrowed. But then the arrogance kicked back in. He assumed I was playing dress-up. "Evie," he called out, his voice echoing in the high-ceilinged lobby. He walked over, his two acolytes trailing behind him. "What on earth are you doing here?" "Getting coffee," I said calmly, taking the cup from the barista. "In the building," he laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Did you actually apply for the receptionist gig? I told you to do that online, Evie. You can't just walk in here and harass HR." The two junior associates exchanged looks. One of them smirked. "I'm not here for a job application, Maverick," I said, taking a sip. "Then why are you here?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a menacing hiss. "Look, if you're here to ask for money, don't. It's embarrassing. I have colleagues here. I can't have my unemployed sister loitering in the lobby looking for handouts." "I'm here on business," I said. "Business?" He rolled his eyes. "What business? Unless you're delivering Uber Eats, you have no business at Vanguard." I looked him in the eye. You should worry less about me and more about what you're signing, Maverick. He paused. Excuse me. The Western region manifests, I said, my voice dropping to a level that only he could hear, but filled with a steely intensity he had never heard from me before. I saw the drafts you approved yesterday. Specifically, the cargo reroutes through the shell company in Nevada. You authorized payment for shipping containers that don't exist. Maverick's face went pale for a split second, but his defense mechanism was denial. You don't know what you're talking about. Those are logistics codes. You wouldn't understand high-level supply chain management. I understand that Legree is having you sign off on level 4 risk assessments without a legal review, I countered. I understand that if those audits trigger, which they will on Friday, your signature is the only one on the paper. You are being set up, Maverick. He stepped back, his face flushing red. He looked at his colleagues, who were watching the exchange with growing interest. He had to win this. He couldn't let his little sister dominate him in front of his subordinates. You are insane, he spat. You're actually jealous. It's pathetic. You're making up spy stories because you can't handle that I'm successful and you're nothing. Get out, before I call security and have you dragged out. You don't want to call security, I said softly. Trust me. Watch me, he sneered. He turned to the security desk. Miller, get over here. Miller, the head guard, looked up from his console. He looked at Maverick. Then he looked at me. I gave Miller a microscopic shake of my head. Miller cleared his throat. Is there a problem, Mr. Vance? Yes, this woman is trespassing. She's bothering executive staff. Escort her out. Miller hesitated. I don't believe she is trespassing, sir. Maverick's jaw dropped. Excuse me, I am a director. She is a nobody. I am telling you to remove her. I'm leaving, Maverick, I said, turning toward the elevators, not the exit. I have a meeting to prepare for, and you should really read the employee handbook regarding harassment of senior staff. Senior staff? Maverick laughed, a desperate, incredulous sound. You're going up, you can't go up. That's the executive elevators. You need a badge. I didn't look back. I walked to the elevator bank, tapped my black card against the reader. The light turned green. The doors slid open. I stepped in and turned around. Maverick was standing in the middle of the lobby, mouth agape, pointing at me as the doors closed, sealing me away in the tower he thought was his. Wednesday was a bloodbath, metaphorically speaking. I spent 12 hours with the forensic accountants. The deeper we dug, the uglier it got. Vanguard wasn't just losing money, it was being looted. And Legree was accelerating the timeline. He must have sensed the new interim CEO was getting close. Around 2:00 p.m., my personal phone, the one I kept for family emergencies, began to buzz incessantly. Mom calling, Dad calling. I finally answered on speaker while reviewing a spreadsheet of offshore accounts. Hello, Caroline. How dare you? Her voice was so shrill it distorted the speaker. Maverick just called me. He is distraught, Evelyn, distraught. Is he? I asked, highlighting a row of transactions totaling $4 million. He said you came to his workplace and made a scene. He said you stole a security badge and tried to humiliate him in front of his team. What is wrong with you? Are you having a breakdown? I didn't steal a badge, Mom, and I didn't make a scene. He did. He said you were speaking nonsense about fake containers and prison time. Christian's voice joined in from the background. Trying to scare him, trying to undermine his confidence during his first week. It is sabotage, plain and simple. You are jealous and you are vindictive. I was trying to warn him, I said, rubbing my temples. Dad, listen to me. Maverick is in trouble. His boss is using him. I have proof that. I don't want to hear your conspiracy theories, Christian roared. You listen to me. You are forbidden from going to that building again. If you go near Maverick's office, we are cutting you off. No more family dinners. No more Christmas. You are dead to us until you apologize. I can't stay away from the building, Dad. I work here. Liar, Caroline screamed. You are a liar. Maverick checked the employee directory. Your name isn't there. It will be on Friday, I said quietly. We are done, Christian said. Do not contact us. Do not contact Maverick. Get help, Evelyn. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. They had just disowned me to protect the illusion of their son's success. It hurt, a sharp physical pain in my chest, but then I looked at the screen in front of me. A new email notification popped up. It was from Legree to Maverick. Subject: urgent authorization needed. Maverick, I need you to sign the attached liability waiver for the Singapore shipment. It's just a formality for the insurance. Do it now. I need it by 3 p.m. I opened the attachment. It wasn't a liability waiver. It was a confession. It was a document that transferred full legal responsibility for a series of toxic assets directly to the regional director of the Western region. If Maverick signed this, he wasn't just going to be fired. He would be liable for $20 million in environmental fines. I had to stop him, not as a sister, but as the CEO preventing a legal catastrophe for the company. I couldn't call him, he wouldn't answer. I couldn't go down there, he'd cause a scene that would alert Legree. I picked up the internal phone and dialed Legree's extension. Legree speaking. His voice was oily, confident. This is the interim CEO, I said. My voice was digitally altered, a standard precaution for initial contact in hostile takeovers. I am reviewing the Singapore files. There was a silence on the other end. I wasn't aware we had a new CEO yet. I thought the board was still deliberating. I have been here since Monday, Simon, and I am looking at the waiver you just sent to Mr. Vance. That, Legree laughed nervously. Standard procedure, just paperwork. If Mr. Vance signs that document, I said, I will consider it an act of conspiracy to commit fraud by both of you. Do not let him sign it. Who is this? Legree demanded, his voice dropping. You can't just. I am the person who owns your email server, Simon. Meeting. Boardroom A Friday at 9:00 a.m. All hands. I hung up. I checked the server logs. Legree had recalled the email. Maverick hadn't signed it yet. I had saved him from the bullet, but he didn't even know the gun was pointed at his head. Later that afternoon, I ordered a company-wide blast. To all staff from Office of the CEO subject. Mandatory all-hands meeting, Friday, 9:00 a.m. Agenda: strategic restructuring and leadership introduction. I watched the read receipts tick up by the thousands. Then, I saw a reply in the general chat channel from Maverick Vance. Maverick Vance, Regional Director. Can't wait to meet the new boss. I've got some great ideas for the Western region to present. Let's show them how we do it at Vanguard. I leaned back, steepled my fingers, and watched the cursor blink. Oh, you'll meet the boss, Maverick, I whispered. And you're definitely going to show everyone exactly how you do it. The trap was set. The investigation was complete. I had the PDFs, the emails, and the bank transfers. All that was left was the execution. The Vanguard Logistics Auditorium was a cavernous space designed to intimidate. 500 seats, tiered in a steep semicircle around a stage that looked more like an altar than a presentation platform. The air was recycled and cold, smelling of nervous sweat and industrial carpet cleaner. I stood in the wings, hidden by the heavy velvet curtain. I watched the feed on a monitor mounted to the wall. The room was packed. Every regional director, every VP, every manager was there. And in the third row, center stage, sat Maverick. He had somehow managed to get guest passes. Sitting next to him were Caroline and Christian. My parents were dressed for a coronation. Caroline was wearing her Sunday best hat, and Christian was beaming, shaking hands with people who had no idea who he was. They looked like royalty visiting their subjects. Maverick looked like the crown prince, leaning back with one arm draped over the empty seat next to him, laughing loudly at something a junior associate said. He was waiting for the CEO to praise him. He was waiting to be paraded as the future of the company. Ms. Vance, the board chairman, a stoic man named Arthur Sterling, stood beside me. We are ready. Thank you, Arthur. Remember the cue. I remember, he said, adjusting his tie. Good luck out there, it's a mess. It won't be for long, I said. Arthur walked out onto the stage. The murmuring in the room died down to a respectful hush. Maverick sat up straighter, nudging our father. I could almost hear him saying, "Watch this." "Good morning," Arthur said into the microphone. "As you know, Vanguard has been navigating turbulent waters. Leadership requires vision, but more importantly, it requires integrity. The board has conducted an exhaustive search for a chief executive who can not only steer the ship, but clean the engine room. I am proud to introduce your new CEO." He paused, the room held its breath. "Please welcome, Evelyn Vance." Arthur stepped back, I walked out. The silence that greeted me wasn't the silence of respect. It was the silence of cognitive dissonance. 500 brains were trying to process the image. I walked to the podium, placing my laptop on the lectern. I plugged in the HDMI cable. The massive screen behind me flickered to life, displaying the Vanguard logo. I looked out at the audience. I found the third row. Maverick's face was a mask of frozen confusion. His mouth was slightly open. Caroline was squinting, as if trying to bring me into focus, while Christian looked like he had swallowed a lemon whole. "Good morning," I said, my voice amplified, crisp and commanding. "I am Evelyn Vance. For the past week, I have been conducting a forensic audit of this company's operations." "What is this?" The shout came from the third row. Maverick stood up. He couldn't help himself. The cognitive dissonance had snapped. "Maverick, sit down," Christian hissed, tugging at his jacket. "No," Maverick shouted, looking around at his colleagues with a desperate, wild grin. "This is a joke, right? This is a prank. That's my sister. She's a freelancer. She doesn't work here. She's mentally unstable." The room gasped. Security started to move from the sides, but I held up a hand. "Mr. Vance," I said, my voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel. "You are currently the regional director of the Western Division. Is that correct?" "You know it is," Maverick yelled, his face turning beet red. "Get off the stage, Evelyn. You are embarrassing the family. Security, why aren't you doing anything?" "I am the CEO, Mr. Vance," I said calmly. "And if you sit down, you might learn why you were hired." "I was hired because I'm the best." "No," I said. I hit a key on my laptop. The screen behind me changed. It wasn't a slide of growth charts. It was an email. The font was blown up to be 20 feet tall. From S. Legree subject, the scapegoat target, Maverick Vance notes, he's perfect. Arrogant, ambitious, and doesn't read the fine print. We can funnel the toxic assets through his signature. When the SEC hits, he takes the fall. He'll be too busy admiring his title to notice he's signing his own arrest warrant. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. It was a physical sound, a wave of shock. Maverick stood there, frozen. He read the words. He read them again. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. He slumped back into his seat, his legs giving out. "This is a fabrication." Simon Legree jumped up from the front row. He was sweating, his eyes darting toward the exits. "This is a deep fake. She hacked the system. She's lying." "Mr. Legree," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. "I didn't hack the system. I own the system. And I also have the Singapore waiver you tried to get Maverick to sign yesterday." "Why?" I clicked the next slide. The document appeared, with Legree's digital signature already affixed, waiting for the countersign. "This document," I explained to the silent room, "would have transferred $20 million of illegal debt onto Maverick Vance personally. It would have ruined him. It would have sent him to federal prison for a minimum of 15 years. I looked directly at Maverick. He was staring at the screen, tears welling in his eyes. He looked small. He looked like the little boy who used to ask me for help with his math homework. "I blocked the email, Maverick," I said softly into the microphone. "You didn't sign it. You are safe." Maverick looked at me. His lip trembled. He realized in that moment that the sister he called a loser had just saved his life. However, I continued, turning my attention back to Legree. Mr. Legree, you did sign it. You authorized the creation of the document. That is conspiracy to commit fraud. I nodded to the back of the room. Miller, escort Mr. Legree to the waiting FBI agents in the lobby. Miller and 2 other guards moved in. Legree didn't fight. He just sagged, defeated, and let them drag him out. The room watched in stunned silence. I turned back to the audience. I looked at my parents. Christian was holding his chest, looking pale. Caroline was weeping into a handkerchief, not for me, but for the shattering of her illusion. We have a lot of work to do, I said, addressing the company. Vanguard is broken, but we are going to fix it. We are going to trim the fat. We are going to value competence over connections. And we are going to start today. I looked at Maverick one last time. Maverick, I said, please report to my office immediately after this meeting. Bring your badge. The office was quiet. The view from the 45th floor was spectacular, the city spread out like a circuit board below me. I sat in the leather chair, the one Maverick had coveted, and waited. The door opened. Miller stood there. He's here, Ms. Vance. Send him in. Maverick walked in. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. His tie was loosened, his jacket was gone, and his eyes were red. He didn't strut. He didn't take a seat. He just stood in front of the desk, looking at the floor. Evie, he whispered. It's Ms. Vance in this office, Maverick, I said, though my voice lacked the bite it had on stage. You saved me, he said, his voice cracking. I read the file. The legal team showed me the rest. Legree was going to put everything on me. I would have gone to jail. Yes, I said, you would have. He looked up, tears spilling over. Why? After everything I said, after how I treated you at dinner, I told you to get a job as a receptionist. I mocked you. Because you're my brother, I said simply. And because I'm good at my job is to fix messes. You were a mess. He wiped his face. So, what happens now? Do I keep the job? I mean, now that Legree is gone, maybe I can actually learn. I can try, Evie. I can work hard. I looked at him with pity. He still didn't get it. Maverick, I said gently, you are not qualified for this job. You never were. You were hired as a scapegoat. You don't know how to read a P&L statement. You don't know logistics law. You are a liability. But you are fired, Maverick, I said, effective immediately. He flinched as if I had slapped him. Fired, but, Mom and Dad, what will I tell them? You will tell them the truth, I said. Or you won't, that's up to you, but you cannot work here. I slid an envelope across the desk. This is a severance package. It's 2 months' pay. It's generous, considering you were here for 4 days. Take it. Go home. Figure out who you are when you aren't trying to be who Mom and Dad want you to be. He took the envelope with shaking hands. Evie, Goodbye, Maverick. He turned and walked to the door. He paused, hand on the handle. You look powerful, Evie. You really fit the chair. I know, I said. He left. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Mom calling. I let it ring. Dad calling. I let it ring. Then a text from Caroline. Evelyn, we are downstairs. Security won't let us up. This is ridiculous. We need to talk. We are so proud of you. We always knew you had it in you. We need to discuss Maverick's position. Surely you can find him a role as a VP. He has experience now. Let's have dinner tonight. My treat. I stared at the message. The pivot was instantaneous. I was no longer the failure. I was the asset. I was the new host for their parasite. They didn't want to apologize. They wanted access. I typed a reply. I am busy. Do not come to my office again. Do not come to my home. I will contact you when and if I am ready. If you try to bypass security, I will have you trespassed. Enjoy the dinner. I hit send, then I blocked the number. I stood up and walked to the window. The storm that had been threatening all week had finally broken. Rain was lashing against the glass, washing the city clean. I had lost my family, in a way. I had severed the tether that held me to their expectations. It was quiet, it was lonely. But as I looked at my reflection in the dark glass, the sharp suit, the tired but clear eyes, I realized something. I wasn't drowning. I was finally truly breathing.